And I want to bring our next speaker forward, Dr. Humberto Blanco. But first, I'd like to say, you may look at this crowd and say, man, that's a pretty meager crowd for Manitoba. You have to look further than that. There's some 244 watching online today, which is great for technology that we can reach out and touch that many people that can't necessarily travel and things like that. So anyways, there's more listening to you today than you can see looking at you in the audience here. So this is great. This is one of my last times up here, and I've finally got some more of my heroes coming to visit. And I met Humberto many years ago when we were soil hunting together. He helped me bag my Kansas Army state soil while you were the manager or doing research with Kansas State University. Previous to that, you were from Bolivia, and you attended University of Missouri for your advanced degrees. You worked in Ohio State. I met you when you were in Kansas, and shortly after that, you went on faculty at the University of Nebraska. And then I saw you just absolutely nail this topic a few years ago at the American Society of Agronomy meetings. It's been on my list to bring you up here since. And this year, people started asking this question. You know, what harm am I doing if I till? So I'm delighted that you're here to help us answer that. And join me in welcoming Humberto to our group.
Awesome. Okay, maybe need to lower that for this guy, right? Thank you very much. It's an honor for me to be here today. John, thank you for bring me to Winnipeg, right? My first time.
Humberto was in Texas this morning.
Oh yeah.
So welcome to Winnipeg.
That's right. Gave a talk yesterday and around 5 p.m. But I made it. So I'm happy to be here with you and talk about this topic, occasional tillage. What does it mean? Could be called one-time tillage, right? Could be called strategic tillage. Kurt has mentioned strategic tillage, right? It could be called, targeted tillage. Okay, so what does it mean, right? So let's look at that. Okay. Well, we all know this, right? It's not only on the States, but also in other parts of the world, right? In the States, what about the Dust Bowl? There are videos, books. The soil conservation book by Hugh Bennett, right, that talks a lot about Dust Bowl. I mean, there are wonderful pictures out there, right? Wonderful, I say, because it really reflects what we did to our soils at that time. But you know what? That was a wake-up call, right? The dust ended up in D.C., and the congressman had to do something. Right? So, what are we going to do about this, right? Okay, we shouldn't plow the soils. Probably we need to come up with new technologies. Is this gone today? Is this the thing of the past? At the bottom, we see that, you know what? I see some soils like this in the Central Great Plains. See some cracks. And some soils with residues. And I heard the previous speakers were talking about residue management. Sometimes we bale 60% in October after harvest corn residue. I go back to those fields in the spring. It's not 60% anymore, right? So there's surface cover as 40% in fall. In the spring, maybe 0, right? So, what should we do about this, right? Okay, so no-till was invented, right? No-till was invented. I think that's a great invention, right? I mean, I see this picture that we are really taking care of the soil. We are adding a good number of blankets there a lot of times, right? Okay, this blanket is going to come from corn. Now it's going to be from cover crops. So this is great. Great invention. But let's look at carefully, more closely, what no-till farming does. Great invention to manage erosion. Actually, that's the reason that was invented, right? Conserves water because we are covering the soil, right? It improves soil properties. Okay, for the whole soil profile, I would say mostly near the surface. What about economics? You're not using the equipment, right? Fuel, a lot of benefits. What about carbon sequestration? I put a question mark there. Does no-till really sequester carbon? That would be another topic for discussion, but in general, yes, no-till accumulates carbon, but that's in the upper 4 inches, in the upper 3 inches a lot of times, right? Depends on the cropping system, on the initial carbon content, and the topography, right? What about yields? What about yields? We know that yields are variable under no-till in semi-arid regions, yes. Like in western Kansas or western Nebraska, I talked to many researchers, colleagues, say, well, we are getting higher yields under no-till, and they are right. Alan Schlegel, Kansas, who retired recently, I mean, he was a no-till guy, scientist there, and then he shared some data with me and now published some papers, and yes, no-till increased yields in semi-arid regions, silt plum soils or loamy soils. But what about in clay soils? In clay soils, some challenges, right? What about weeds? Herbicide-resistant weeds, right? What about carbon and nutrient stratification? Carbon, yes, no-till in general accumulates carbon, but that's going to be near the surface in general. What about P or phosphorus, right? It doesn't move as much as nitrates, right? Then it accumulates near the surface, and then we can lose a lot of that P with sediments when we have this intense rainstorms, especially in sloping soils, like Curtis was talking about. What about acidification? What about compaction? Right? Runoff in some cases. You know what? When I heard about this runoff thing, maybe it was like 25 years ago, I said that no-till always reduces runoff. Well, not based on research data. In some cases, in a few cases, right? In most cases, yes, but in a few cases, no-till can increase runoff. But probably no-till farmers, true no-till farmers might not want to hear this, right? But yes, it can happen, right? Okay. Let's look at the adoption rate on a global scale. Look at the adoption rate. Yeah, obviously in the States, right? North America, about 1/3 of the cropland probably is under conservation tillage here, plus classification given by some scientists. What about in other countries? I mean, other continents? I was in Africa, only what? 1%? In Russia, Ukraine, Asia. What's going on? I mean, if no-till is that great, should have been adopted everywhere, right? I mean, why is like that? It's similar in Brazil, Paraguay, Argentina, Eastern Bolivia, and then in the States and Canada, you know, good percentage of lands are under no-till. But we have this system that requires a lot of input, right? You need to have heavy equipment, not heavy equipment, but you have to have a lot of fertilizers, right? You have to make sure that you have access to herbicides, right? So a lot of times we don't consider the local, the site specificity, right? We expect, okay, no-till, works great in this soil, and it should work in other soils too. Well, what about this number? Only about 15% of global cropland areas under conservation tillage. I mean, that's even conservation ag. I mean, conservation ag, what does it mean? Does it no-till? Can include strip till and reduced till, right? But if no-till is that great, shouldn't be adopted in 100% of cases, right? Okay, so some examples with the challenges with no-till. We have this heavy equipment, right? And they are needed. These machines are needed. Because some farmers or producers have this 500 acres, 1,000 acres. We do need this heavy equipment, but it comes the challenge, right? Compaction. What about this? A photo from Kansas, Koshia, near Hayes, where I met John the first time. I worked with Phil Stallman, who retired, a wheat scientist, and he said, Blanco, you should try this herbicide. Let's try this. Well, not working that great. What about carbon sequestration? I mean, there are many papers out there, but I picked this from sites in the Central Great Plains, Hutchinson, Kansas. The green one is no-till, red one is conventional till. So Hutchinson's 3 sites are all in Kansas: Hutchinson, Hayes, and Tribune. You know what? I was hoping to see that green light would be always separate from red, right? But it seems that no-till, these experiments are what? How old are these? Greater than more than 20 years, or 25, 30. But no-till accumulated carbon only in the upper what? Maybe 2 inches. And then you know what happens? Like in Hutchinson. Look at the one in Hutchinson and the one on the very left. It seems at the bottom of plow layer, actually conventional till, it's accumulating more carbon than if you compute the cumulative amount for the whole profile, say from 0 to 60 or 100, or that's an English unit, 0 to 40 inches. We don't see differences between no-till and plow-till sometimes. You know what? I was also surprised about this. Even my students were surprised in eastern Nebraska when we worked with USDA scientists. They had a very nice long-term tillage experiment there. Then we measured the water infiltration with the double ring infiltrometers. Okay, there were 4 tillage systems: small well plow, the red one, right? No-till, green, and disc, blue, and then the chisel plow at the bottom, right? And then you know what? This was 1 year after plowing. You know, if it's immediately after plowing, obviously, you know, the soil is loose and you're gonna increase infiltration. But this was after 1 year. More well plow has higher water infiltration than no-till. We were walking around and even our boots were sinking actually. After 1 year, that soil is still a bit loose. So no-till benefits, it depends on a good number of factors, right? What about another example from Nebraska? Look at just those 2 circles. So what do we have in here? We have 3 levels of nitrogen: 0, right? 80, 160 kg per hectare. Apologies for the metric units, right? Then on the x-axis we have what? Continuous. We have 3 tillage systems: small well plow, disc, no-till. And then within each we have 2 cropping systems. Let's just look at continuous curve. And the small well plow, that's the circle there, the red one. So we applied 160 kg nitrogen per hectare, and that's after like 25 years, a long-term experiment. The pH decreased from what? The white one is the control, right? It decreased from, say, about 6.5 to 6. That's on their mollwort plow, right? Their continuous corn mollwort plow. What about now no-till? For the same cropping system, continuous corn under no-till, the pH decreased from 6, from about 6.5 to what? To 4.7. What's going on? I thought no-till was the best invention. Should be all the way around, right? I mean, I've been talking to some no-till guys. A friend of mine, Paul Yassa, probably, he's a no-till guy in Nebraska. I mean, he is knowledgeable. I learned a lot of things from him. And then we have been arguing quite a bit about the no-till benefits, and obviously he agrees with all the research publications as well. So what do we know about the benefits about no-till, right? When it comes to, let's say, soil physical environment. This guy is going to now start preaching about soil physical environment because he teaches soil physics, right? I teach soil physics and soil management. So we published a review paper several years ago, and we said, okay, does no-till improve soil physical properties compared to conventional plow in all cases? I mean, I'm not expecting that you read that fine print. The last sentence is, in general, yes. But it would be nice to say, no-till always improves soil physical properties. But it's not the case, right? Okay. Okay, let's go back to this, how can we now, okay. Again, I keep saying that phrase, no-till is, it's a great invention. We need to enhance it, right? We shouldn't be saying, okay, well, no-till doesn't work in some cases, so let's go back to the old days. Is that the solution? I don't think so. I still believe in this diagram. We have this by plowing the soil for decades. We reduced organic carbon content, organic matter content by 50, 40, 30%, depending where you are. But you know what? By adopting no-till, we have stabilized or increased in most cases, actually, right? But now we need another technology, the blue one, no-till and others. Right? I mean, no-till alone is not enough. Adding cover crops, okay? Well, it doesn't work in some cases. That's another topic of discussion. Like Curtis was saying, about cover crops, they work great on those on the summit, those, knolls on those summit positions. Well, it's easier said than done. I mean, doesn't work that great in some cases. Well, what about if the soil is clay and whatever? I mean, there are many factors to consider. How can we enhance no-till performance? We need to enhance it. Right? Okay, what about occasional tillage? Would that enhance? That's like going backwards, right? I mean, Humberto is saying, okay, it took me 40 years to increase organic matter content, maybe near the surface, but it increased by 0.5% or something. But now you are saying that, okay, you plow it, and then all those great things that they acquired after 20, 30 years will be gone. Some people would say it may be a sacrilege, It's a sacrilege. It's going to erase all the great things I've done. Right? Okay. But what I said is plow-till, obviously let's call it continuous plow-till. I mean, plowing every year is not going to work. That's going to take us back to the Dust Bowl era, right? We adopted no-till. I think in general we improved a lot of things near the surface, but we do have some challenges, right? But then we have no-till, then we have cover crops, then in some cases we use cover crops, in some cases for control traffic. It's easier said than done. In research centers we have used control traffic and it works pretty good. We match the equipment with right? But under on-farm conditions, control traffic can be challenging. What about if we add the OT, occasional tillage, to that, on top of that? Right? Then later, probably say, okay, I added OT, I still have these issues, okay, these challenges, then probably we can explore maybe other alternatives. But it's not about going back to the old days. It's not going to work. You know what? These are the expected potential benefits of occasional tillage, right? Right? Okay? It's going to control weeds. It's going to fix compaction. It's going to reduce acidification. It's going to translocate carbon to deeper layers. And on, right? Seems a lot of benefits there. Right? Why not do it? So, depends who you talk to. Over the years, I learned that, like in the press or in some blogs, or some people, okay, well, you shouldn't be talking about occasional tillage because that's going to hurt the environment, and then it's like going backwards. But what about the data, right? I mean, it would be great for me to say, well, you shouldn't be using occasional tillage because it disturbs the soil. Well, what about the evidence? What about the experimental data? Right? We published this paper John mentioned almost 5 years ago now. Time flies when you're having fun, right? So we published this paper with Charlie Workman, who did a lot of work on, he retired, did work on occasional tillage. And then we found what? That in general, in summary, occasional tillage is not that bad. It doesn't erase all the benefits. Okay. But we didn't have a lot of studies. We did some, that's why we wrote this review paper, right? But then I've been following literature. So I prepared this just last week, or a couple of weeks ago before emailing this. You know what? Now we have more studies. Look at that. And that review paper came out, reviewed papers up to 2019, right? It was published in 2020. So in the US, there were only 7 papers. After 2020, now we have 5. Australia has been one of the leaders, doing a lot of work or research on conservation tillage. Brazil, and some in China, right? And a few in other countries. And then, look at that. It seems that the number of papers doubled after we published that review. So that's intriguing, right? I've been following this literature. We've done some research as well on occasional tillage, saying, now we have more data. So probably our previous conclusions may change, right? Okay, so what I've done is I did a literature review, right? So that's OT, occasional tillage, enhanced performance of no-till. This is probably one of the key slides. So here are the counts. Okay, comparing no-till against occasional tillage. Right, occasional tillage and no-till. When it comes to weed management, let's start from the left. Compaction. Penetration resistance is one of the indicators. We push this device into the soil and kind of simulates root penetration. Probably not hundreds of studies there, but in 5 studies, we still need more studies, I think. Only 5. Yes, occasional tillage reduces penetration resistance as expected. What about bulk density? Soil bulk density is another indicator. It seems soil bulk density is more variable. Interesting there, right? What about runoff, the third one? From runoff, it's kind of mixed, right? It can increase in a few cases, but not in other cases. What about sediment? Be careful with that. Yeah, in some cases, or in most cases, I would say sediment can increase, and that's related obviously to runoff, right? What about dissolved pea? Dissolved pea. That green bar, it's, it's taller than the blue one. So that means that, occasional tillage is reducing risks of pea losses, but dissolved pea, not sediment-associated pea. I think that's promising, right? What about aggregate stability? We would like to improve soil structure, that's the basis for a lot of physical, chemical, and biological processes. It seems it's kind of mixed. I mean, you just performed surgery, and you expect that the aggregates will be just destroyed, but it seems it's not really the case there, right? What about water? I mean, by plowing, you inverted the soil in some cases, and then evaporation, right? I mean, I'm gonna lose all the water that I conserved over the years. Well, yellow there, no effect in most cases, right? What about carbon? What about carbon? Oh, not much there either, right? I mean, it seems no effect in most cases, even live oil carbon. What about CO2 fluxes? I mean, yeah, immediately after tillage, there's some losses, of carbon as CO2, but that can be restored quickly if you are very careful. We'll chat about that in the next few minutes. What about weed management? Weed management, that's probably one of the main reasons for considering occasional tillage. Yes, occasional tillage does a great job. It's gonna control weeds, but the question is for how long, right? What about yields? Yields, it has kind of mixed effect, but it has no effect in half the cases. It can reduce probably in a few cases, but in majority of cases, no effect. This is what we expect, right? Before OT, you had that high carbon, accumulated near the surface in no-till soils, and then low carbon in the layer below. Now, what about if you invert it using moldwort plow? Right? That would be a great thing. Flip it. Bring the unimproved layer to the surface and bury the improved layer, and that's probably carbon sequestration, right? So that's what's going on in some studies. I mean, you are inverting. You are reducing. If you measure immediately after occasional tillage the amount of carbon, probably you're going to see lower carbon concentration near the surface, yes, compared to true no-till. But if you measure for the lower depths, then maybe OT is storing carbon at the bottom of the plow layer because you just flipped the layers, right? So the carbon-enriched layer is at the bottom of the plow layer. But in general, occasional tillage has minimal or no effects on soil carbon. Okay? But there are many factors to consider. Okay, I'm not here to say, yes, go ahead and use occasional tillage. It's highly, 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 highly context specific, okay? Site specific. What tillage method are you going to use? Moldwort plow or disc or chisel? How often? Once in 10 years? Once in 5 years? Every other year? Right? What's the soil texture in your field? What's the slope? I mean, if it's 10%, are you going to do occasional tillage? What's the organic matter content level, right? What about the climate? What about the depth? What about the timing? When are you going to do this? There are many factors to consider. This is the challenge. Yes, occasional tillage can improve or enhance no-till performance, it seems, in some cases, right? But how long do the benefits last? Based on published data, this is what we know. They are short-lived. How long? 1, 2, 3 years. I was expecting to see more. I mean, Yes, it can control weeds, right? And then you know what? But in the second season, it only controls weeds by 50%. Or it's mixed and eligible after 2-3 years. And then if it degrades, that's another thing. If it degrades soil properties though, soil properties will recover also as within 1-2 years. And a lot of times occasional tillage, not a lot of times, in some cases will reduce aggregate stability. And then that could be like in the upper, let's say, some people look at different depth increments, 0 to 4 inches, 4 to 8, and then decreased. But you know what? And then as time passes, probably in the year 2, you're going to see only, lower aggregate stability, only near shallow, right? So the negative effects are in the shallow surface. So the negative effects are disappearing, right? How often should I do this, right? How often do you recommend? Once in 10 years? Right? This is what we suggest based on papers. This is what we suggested. Not me, but other researchers as well. Once in 5 or 10 years, okay? But what about what I just mentioned about the short-lived effect? I just said it doesn't last that long. In general, maybe 2 years. Should we tell them, should we use OT every 2 or every 3 years? But what about the negative effects of tillage, right? Should we rotate occasional tillage like every 4 or 5 years maybe, like we do with extended rotations, right? Extended rotation, and then maybe 5 years? There are some papers, there are some colleagues who have done this, compared this. No-till, occasional tillage every other year. Occasional tillage every 2 years, few papers. And you know what they found? Yields increased. That seemed to be great. But it's a high input system because you are adding a lot of fertilizer. You're irrigating. What about soil recovery though? They haven't looked at it. We still don't have a lot of data on this. What about the soil recovery? Because you are performing surgery very often. I mean, minor surgery is needed, right? Once in 10 years, maybe. What about if we have surgery every year? I mean, I might not recover. It's the same thing with the soil. We talk about soil health. If you want to improve soil health, make sure that you understand human, we have to treat soil like humans. I mean, human health is analogous to soil health, right? You don't want to be performing the surgery every year. But what is the return period? What is the return periods? What's your recommendation? How often? Unfortunately, I would still say we still need a bit more data on that, But I would say maybe 3 years or 5 years, but not less than 3 years. Okay? What about the tillage? Tillage tool, the tillage tool. Depends, right? I mean, if you're using a moldwort plow or chisel plow, depends on the depth of disturbance. Depends on your goal. Let's say that you want to bury carbon, organic matter, right? Deep in the soil, probably moldwort plow is the way to go. Now, what about if you want to bury seeds, wheat seeds, right? Then probably moldwort plow is the way to go. So it depends on your goal. But that's very drastic, right? Moldwort plow buries about invert soil about 60 or 70%, and buries about what? About 90% of seeds. Shallow occasional tillage can control, right? But the seeds are still near the surface, right? But moldwort plow is the cause of soil degradation, so that's why we don't want to use that very often. So there is a trade-off there, right? Which one then? Inversion or shallow, right? Okay? When should this be done? In fall? Spring? I think we need other models, to say, okay, this season is going to be dry, Then probably we can time our occasional tillage. Should we do in fall? Because we have more time in fall. But then the whole in winter and early spring, I mean, the soil will be exposed, right? Probably we should do in spring, but the soil is wet though, right? I mean, more risk of compaction, right? Right? What about adding, helping occasional tillage? What about performing occasional tillage and planting cover crops immediately? Or planting crops as soon as possible, right? So timing, depends a lot on soil conditions and weather conditions, okay? Where can occasional tillage be used, right? No, not all no-till soils need OT, and you guys know that, right? I mean, like sloping soils, we shouldn't be considering using occasional tillage. Maybe in deep soils or medium texture soils, right? Maybe soils with high initial organic carbon concentration could be more resilient, right? But definitely not, in the last section there, definitely not an erosion prone, low carbon, low residue input, right? Okay. One thing has been, I've given this type of talks to farmers and said, why do you need occasional tillage? Because my neighbor is doing it. Well, what's your goal? I mean, right? What is your goal for considering occasional tillage? Have you really tried all other alternatives? Don't you? Probably I've seen some fields like this, not many. I mean, after corn silage, the one on the right, I mean, that's like plow till for me. That soil is naked. What about on the left? I mean, that's no-till, but no-till works when you pair with residues. If you have it like this, I mean, no-till is going to obviously suffer, and then you are thinking about occasional tillage, right? Probably you guys already heard about this, but you know what? Controlled traffic, that would be awesome to adopt, to reduce, to confine wheel traffic to the same rows year after year, and then we don't have to worry about compaction. What about weeds? Well, cover crops are, highly effective for controlling weeds. But in some cases, we're not such like in western Nebraska. I mean, we cannot grow cover crops because of limited precipitation unless you irrigate. That's different. Unless you irrigate. I mean, with Cody Creech, with others, with Drew Lyon, and we tried several times. I mean, they are not gonna prosper. Cover crops need water. What about diversifying cropping systems or rotations? Would be an alternative, right? Or strip till instead of occasional till, a strip till, right? I mean, if you have a lot of residues, and a strip till can work. And other management practices, right? But we really need to exhaust all these practices. Cover crops, look at those photos from a couple of studies that we conducted. The one on the left, field without cover crops. When my students showed up there, you know what they thought? That the green one is cover crop. No, that's weed. The one on the right is field with cover crops from previous fall. That doesn't have any weeds. That was cover crop mix. And then another site near North Platte in west central Nebraska. Rye, look at that. That was almost my height. Cereal rye cover crop. But that was planted after the previous year. This photo was taken in late May, and then cover crop rye was planted the year before in late August after corn silage. But look at the one, the next treatment. That was supposed to be no cover crop, right? There's no cover crop. But you know what? Weeds are as tall as rye. So that's a lot. So it's the fields without cover crops, invite a lot of these species, If you don't cover that soil with something that you like, well, God will cover it for you, right? And then that will take care of, right? Because it's available. And it's more diversity. Because actually, Rodrigo Werley is a faculty. He moved from UNL to Wisconsin. I published a paper from there. I mean, I'm not a wheat scientist, but he quantified there are a good number of wheat species there on the right. On the left, I see only it's pure rye for me. So it is, then there was an issue with traffic in one of the fields, mead, just north of Lincoln, Nebraska, and then we put this brassicas. Look at that road is still there, but you know what? The cover crops are growing, and then we dug some of those plants, and then cover crops are penetrating deep into the soil, those brassicas, and then can alleviate compaction. A classic paper, probably not, I'm talking about from my group. This is a 15-year-old study with Mark Klassen in just north of Wichita in Kansas. Look at what we did is something that many scientists have not looked at. What we determined is the maximum bulk density with the Proctor test. It's an old test, but it's highly sensitive. Look at so we had 3 treatments. We had no cover crops, sun hemp, right? Summer cover crops, and then the off-season soybean. What was the cropping system? It was wheat, sorghum. No-till wheat, sorghum. Look at that, what's going on? The red one is on top. So the bulk density under no cover crop is higher than under cover crops. So the cover crops are reducing the susceptibility of the soil to compaction, right? But this is small. One may argue, okay, let's look at the values. Okay, what's the peak for the red curve is like 1.65, right? Now the other ones are like 1.58. Small, it helps, but it's not going to solve probably, but it helps. Why are cover crops reducing compactability? It's because they are adding organic matter, right? Because Proctor bulk density is highly correlated with what? With organic matter. Okay? So here is my summary. Wow, so, okay, what did I learn from here? You know what? If you perform occasional tillage in 5 or 10 years, this is what you expect. It's going to alleviate compaction, yes. It's going to reduce wet density, yes. It will alleviate also stratification, okay? And then runoff of the soil, specifically P. It's going to have minimal effects on changing other soil properties, but might increase erosion. Because you just perform surgery, you're just exposing the soil to water and wind erosion, right? If you don't cover that soil immediately with a blanket, you're in trouble, right? So that's our challenge. What about yields? That's the bottom line. What about yields? Generally no effect on yields. But you know what? Is this 25% of studies and 25% of cases, it increases crop yields. And when it increases crop yields, it increases economics. Right? So there's a few economic studies on occasional tillage and found, yes, it improves economics, well, in about 25% of cases. One may argue, well, okay, if you're placing carbon at deeper layers, what about carbon credits? Or what about weeds? If you are controlling weeds with occasional tillage, well, what you are just saved, cost on herbicide use, right? So there could be some benefits. But the challenge is that the effect is only significant in year 1, and then after that, it's minimal after 2 or 3 years. It depends a lot on the tillage system, again, you are using on the tool. Mower plow, I mean, that's going to really probably change properties probably in some cases, but also varies the seeds and carbon, right? Okay, well, this is it. You can kick me out of here and say, well, this is what I think after reading so many papers, not that many, but the available papers out there. If you perform occasional tillage in your no-till farm. Once in 5 and 10 years, I don't think it's going to erase all the benefits you have acquired. But you need to control erosion. We need to control erosion. Okay? So the exciting part is, can occasional tillage enhance my no-till system? I don't want to go backwards. I want to enhance it. I put that in red because, yes, but it's only some, right? I mean, okay, I'm going to manage weeds without degrading my soil properties. I'm going to manage weeds without reducing carbon concentration. Yeah, there are some benefits there. But again, the benefits are short-lived, right? I mean, maybe less than 2 years, in some cases 3 years. Okay, another one is, I think occasional tillage should be allowed in no-till farming. But if, what's that if? Please, let's exhaust all other alternatives. You know, it's like surgery, having surgery, right? Knee surgery. To try other things, maybe, pills before going to the doctor, because it's going to be painful. But I think that surgery is needed, I'm telling you. I mean, we have this system here. We have no-till, strict packaging. Don't touch the soil. We have moldwork plow. We had this moldwork plow in the old days saying, okay, surgery, 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 every year. But somewhere maybe in between. In some cases, minimum of reduced tillage can work on your farm, right? Because the differences between no-till and reduced till in terms of like soil physical properties, not much there. But not moldwork plow. That's going to continue. Doing moldwork plow every year, it's going to degrade the soil. But you know what? I still think we need more data, I think. I mean, we have like, what, 44 papers? I think we need thousands. Right? But so far, if we have thousands, is that going to change the story? Maybe not, but it's going to be more site-specific and things like that, right? But I consider this, adding occasional tillage to your no-till system could be the last resort. It's like having, again, emergency or surgery. We need to try other options first, right? Okay? That's all what I had, but now I'm ready for questions, if any.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm going to take one question if people are interested. Those people are leaving, so maybe you need to slip up that code. But is there a question in the group here? Okay, you got it.
Yeah. Oh, wow. He's faster than me.
We need the CCA code back.
Did you see any answers on pH? So you said it was lower in no-till. Did you see any results with the occasional tillage?
Yeah, not in that specific experiment, but in other experiments, yes. No-till, occasional tillage alleviated that because it mixed it, it flipped it, right? So it mixed it so the pH wasn't as low anymore, because it was like 4.5, right, in that study, but we did not impose occasional tillage in that specific experiment. But in other cases, yeah, some researchers some fields had like pH of 5, then they perform OT, then now pH is 6, right? It's just by the mixing effect. Okay? Yep.
Thanks once again for bringing us this great, informative news. And probably some of us couldn't do this because, like Curtis is worried about getting shot, but you're far enough away from home. You're safe. Our party gift. And thank you very much for attending. And join me again in thanking for that presentation.